5 Ryzen 9000s were killed in a single day by ASRock motherboards, allegedly. ASRock has issued a statement saying it's investigating reports of AMD Ryzen 9000s failing on its AM5 motherboards. The company says that it is conducting internal reviews, working with AMD, and rolling out BIOS optimizations to improve stability. This comes after 5 different Reddit posts claiming multiple Ryzen 9000 chips across different models stopped working, with some cases showing systems unable to boot even after BIOS updates. In most of these reports, the chips are getting hot enough to leave scorch marks on the CPU and socket. Ooh. And Tom's Hardware found around 350 reports of the same issue, albeit those ones are not verified. So our discussion question here is, when hardware failures start trending online, how much should consumers rely on these anecdotal reports versus official failure rate numbers?
Yikes, that's tough. Anecdotes are important. I don't think anecdotes should just be ignored. Official failure rate data, though, might take a really long time. And I think you should be aware of the anecdotes, just in case there isn't official failure rate data. Also, where did the official failure rate data come from?
Yeah, I wish I could. Who would I trust today if they gave me like internal failure rates? Who would you trust?
Internal failure rates?
I'd trust Noctua.
Okay.
If Noctua published a failure rate, which I don't think they ever would, but if they did, I think I'd believe them. Is there anyone else you can think of that you would believe?
I don't mean to offend, I think effectively no one. I think it's like, and this isn't because I'm like, companies are evil. It's like, there's always the potential of a perverse incentive at every company everywhere. There's always the potential. There are companies where I think it might happen less. I am very ignorant to the reality of a lot of those companies. Like, yeah, my gut check says that Noctua is probably going to be legit about it. But do I have any idea how Noctua functions as a company? Not in the slightest.
I think I probably have a little more insight than you.
Like, talked to them? I've literally never talked to them.
But not much, because I'm not just taking them at their word. Like they've said over and over again, like, we cared about this and we made it quiet and reliable, and we care about measurements and engineering and testing. And then that has borne out so many times that I've built.
There's a bit of a track record going on.
Yeah, there's a track record.
But you're not in meetings with them, seeing how they deal with management.
No, I'm not.
So who knows? There might be a perverse incentive somewhere, which could push someone to skew things a little bit. Like you never know.
I haven't met every single person who works at Noctua. That's for sure.
No. So there are companies that I would see that data from and believe more. There are companies that I would see that data from and believe less.
Faxon says
I would want third party.
I'd trust Puget Systems. Puget.
They're pretty freaking legit.
They're pretty based.
They're pretty freaking based.
I've met John. He's pretty based.
That's one that I would index quite high in the. But for basically all of them, and when I say third party, this is a problem with all of these situations. A third party can't be hired by them. We have seen this. We've literally seen this happen. When that data gets skewed. There was an Intel one a bunch of years back. We talked about it on Wine Show.
You're not talking about Principled Technologies, are you?
Maybe that was it.
Where the benchmark data was off?
I think that is what I'm talking about then. It's not failure rate data, but I'm just talking about almost any data coming from a company.
Sure. And I think that my bar would be lower for a private conversation versus something that they published. If an SI, for instance, told me we've seen a 50% failure rate on these bloody things in the field. That's very talking shop.
Higher numbers also make me believe it way more.
And I would
if somebody said 50% failure rate, I would just believe it.
Especially if we're talking as And the context of the conversation matters as well. Like, we're talking as business owners.
Yes.
And if I was talking about like, oh yeah, we had this issue with our backpack where the stupid bloody supplier didn't
and they're
put
like,
the
oh
two
my
layers
God,
on. They're
I'm
like,
going through this right now. It's horrible.
Yeah, we're getting over half of our, whatever card X is failing in the field, and it's costing me a fortune in warranty returns. Like, where you're swapping war stories.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like the context.
It's down to believe that a little bit more. Yeah.
Matters. Slithery says Falcon. Falcon is another SI, actually. 2 SIs on my list that I think if Kelt told me something, I'd be like, yeah, because that guy cares so much. I don't think I've met almost anyone else in the industry who's been in it as long as him and just like been through the ringer as much as him. And because you got to remember, Falcon's not a volume company.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of like Puget. They've stayed in their lane and excelled in their niche, but not like scaled, right? Like he's not hanging out on his yacht, every other weekend. Like he works, and so he's just been kind of working as an SI. So this is back when I was at NCIX. You get kind of screwed on everything. You get screwed on pricing, you get screwed on allocation, you get screwed on support. Like you go and you list this stuff and you say, yeah, it's compatible, but like, oh my God, I didn't even get any of these until yesterday. And a few weeks ago to do a bit of like validation and testing, but like, I don't have the engineering resources that an AMD or an Intel or an NVIDIA has. So I'm doing my best with like open source tools or community built tools. Like it's a really tough business, and yeah, Kelt's still super passionate, which is impressive.
Mm-hmm. Cool guy.
The thing about an SI though is they're not really throwing their own product under the bus.
They could be. They have their own cases, don't they?
Yeah.
What if their stuff's overheating?
Yeah. I think even then though, it's like a shared blame. Whereas I think I would have a harder time believing someone's data on their own product. Like if I told you guys a failure rate for LTT screwdriver, I think that would be harder for you to believe versus if I told you guys a failure rate for our mold maker making the handles or something like that. It's hard to admit your own fault, and I think that we intuitively know that. And we trust people less when they are.
Also, you came back to what's the motivation behind the conversation. If you say the failure rate of the mold maker, that to me comes across as like, woe is me, our expenses are high. And
I'm trying to spin our quality control, rejecting those failures.
If it's further down the line, then you risk the incompetence angle.
That's right. Or I'm throwing a member of my team under the bus, which obviously I would have more sensitivity about versus throwing some random under the bus, right?
Yeah, you don't have to deal with those conversations.
Like if I had to if for some reason I had to throw Kyle under the bus for something, I would want to sugarcoat it. Yeah. I would want to. At least a little.
That is a form of perverse incentive. The whole thing's a mess. Basically, I wouldn't blindly trust any of these numbers, but do with any of them what you will.
I'm just I want to check out chat. Hi, Josh says, what about Seasonic? Seasonic, I don't know. I see their behavior as building quality products and standing behind them, but I don't know that many people there. Like our rep is amazing. He's like the coolest guy ever. And if he was the CEO of the company, I'd be like, yeah, because he is based. But I don't know the senior leadership there the way that I do Noctua, Falcon, or Puget, where I've actually met them and had conversations with them. Yeah, what else is here? Yeah, not much, man.
Bits of Bits says, what about LTT Store? I hear those guys are a thing. This might be spooky, but no.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the exact same reason I already gave.
The perverse incentives, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are impossible to 100% get rid of, in my opinion.
Tell me something.
Yeah.
Tell me something. Because what I'll say is I wouldn't publish that. I wouldn't publish it if it was good, and I wouldn't publish it if it was bad. So for that,
Is this part of why?
so for that reason, if I was to publish it, do you think I would question my motivation?
I would question your motivation. I think there are motivations that could exist that would make me fairly strongly believe it.
Sure. Like there'd have to be a reason. Like why am I talking about, our expenses? Well, there's a reason. There's because somebody has raised this as a thing.
You're not going to win that war.
With the cables?
No, with the because because you're trying to win a questioning war with transparency, but legally cannot be. I don't think you can.
No, I can't be fully transparent.
Yeah.
But what I can say is objectively, we are making the investments that people seem to think that we're not.
But then but this is the problem because the questions are infinite. And then
Sure.
And your problem is if there is a question at all on the internet, you'll find it.
Oh yeah.
And then that bothers.
I mean, I think I've said about as much as there is to say at this point.
Okay.
For this one. The simple fact is that whether it's through hiring more support or whether it's through scaling salaries, we have, in spite of stagnant revenue over the last few years and declining profits, we have continued to invest in both. And you would never in 1,000 years pry the exact reasons out of me for any single employee's, pay scaling. In fact, in most cases, this may surprise you.
He doesn't know.
I don't do everything and I don't even know. Right? And so you would never, you'd never get that out of me because...
And just to force...
And you shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I agree. To force it back to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason for my comment about the CW stuff. It has genuinely nothing negative to do with CW.
Yeah.
The reason for that comment for me is that it scales into everything, and that included my own, and that's how I view CW. It's not mine, but that's how I viewed it in that context. Was like I would still question it because, like, the second you start getting into distributed work, which is like any company ever that has employees, there's weird stuff going on. There's weird stuff going on everywhere. And like, what if someone's goals very nobly is like, hey, let's get failure rate down. Let's make the products more reliable.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that they can get their bonus or whatever is by being like, numbers 1% higher. Nice. Got it. Yeah, stuff might happen.
And I'd have no way of knowing that.
No.
Like I could stand here and I could pass information along to you guys that I might not even know is bad.
And I love the CW people. They're great.
Yeah.
But just like any company,
but like
people come in, people leave.
Yeah.
Things change.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know.
I don't know, man. Like I'm sitting here going like, and it's hard to divorce ourselves.
I am asking 0 people to blindly trust the information from labs.
Yeah.
And I never have.
Well, we've always said you should get multiple sources.
Exactly.
And that's the inherent problem here is
Yes.
there is no multiple source.
Exactly. I'm falling back to the same argument we have always fallen back to.
But it's hard to divorce myself from personal trust. If Kyle told me, I would believe him.
But that's a
but
different
I shouldn't.
thing. That's
because maybe
there's a required efficiency in order to live in a certain amount of trust in people around you. And I think in your situation,
but not just that, I think he's earned it.
Sure.
Like he doesn't hide things from me. I don't find out about things later.
Not particularly with Kyle, but I'm talking about from the perspective of an audience member, and I can't tell that audience member to do that.
No, you're right.
If I'm trying to give this audience member, I think the modern people say chat. If I'm trying to give chat good advice on how to approach things and conduct themselves and whatnot.
Yeah.
Blindly believe us because we're cool company is like not the line.
No, we'd never say that.
But that's my point. So it's no slight against CW. Again, I'm pointing at labs. Don't blindly believe stuff from labs either. Get multiple sources. And this is because I'm trying to be consistent.
Yeah, multiple sources, and also, I mean, logicking your way through things is also good too. Understanding, like I've always told people when I talk about negotiations is like understand both sides of the table, or you have absolutely no shot whatsoever of reaching any kind of meaningful agreement, right? And it's the same when you're trying to understand why people are doing the things that they're doing. I think it's very easy to assume that someone is doing something because they're a malicious monster or because they're a big dummy or whatever, but most of the time that's not the case. So if we sit and we go, okay, you know, what would be his motivation for representing this failure rate or this data in this particular way? I think it can help us, and maybe that's where the context of the conversation comes in, because if someone is trying
what is the goals around this?
Yeah, if they're trying to impress you with how much loss they've absorbed this quarter, if it's a game of one-upmanship, then if anything, you might think they might exaggerate it. Whereas if they're trying to sell you a big contract to use their systems, the last thing that they're going to want to bring up is that 50% of the SSDs they're using have failed in the last quarter.
If someone's trying to sell their company, they want it to look like an extremely well-oiled machine with low failure rates. If someone's trying to get sympathy from their customers, they might try to point that their failure rates are really high because their quality control is really high. There are reasons all over the place, constantly, that especially the no, I don't know if that's true. I was going to say especially bigger companies, because there are like smaller factions with their own goals that the people you might know might not even know those people exist, that are causing things to kind of happen within these spaces, and it gets a little bit crazy. So yeah, I don't know. You could use it as information. Yeah, there you go. You could use it as information. I would prefer if it came from more than one source. So like if a company claimed that they had something going on, our devices fail only 3% of the time after 4 years or 2 years or something. Neat. That sounds cool. I'm not going to put a ton of stock into that. Okay. And then if a third party source, if a creator, YouTube creator, whatever comes out there,
or a retailer,
if Project Farm rips their thing apart for whatever reason,
sure,
I'm going to put more weight on that.
Right. Okay. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean
use a non-tech creator.
The exact numbers, right? Nope. Like if AMD were to say our CPU failure rates are less than 1%. And then like a retailer were to come out and say, yeah, we get less than 2% returns and most of them still work, it would reinforce it at least, even if it doesn't mean that I believe 100%. But I was gonna bring this up. You said, you know, something about putting more stock in it, and that reminded me, like some of these companies are public companies on the subject of stock, and there's, in theory, legal ramifications for lying to investors, for instance. Would you believe it anymore if, in addressing this Ryzen CPUs are dying thing, that AMD on a quarterly call said, we've investigated it and we've found that it's actually a failure rate of less than 0.1%, and we are still going to investigate it, but it's a relatively isolated issue. Would you believe it even a little bit more, knowing the sort of the potential legal ramifications around it? If a whistleblower were to come out and say that that's not actually what happened?
I don't think so.
Is that just because of the current zero consequences environment?
3,000%, yeah. Yeah, nothing happens when companies do that, so I wouldn't believe it. If things did, then yeah. Also, I've heard this is true. I'm not even trying to get political, and I've heard this is just like in the business world, like something you should do, but I'm not into it. Naitohan?
Sure.
Said Trump did this with his properties. Forbes calls, it's worth so much. Put me on your super wealthy list. Whatever. IRS calls, the building's falling apart. It's so worthless. You should probably charge me less taxes because the property value is lower. And like this is, he used Trump in that example, brother. people be doing that.
That's one of the few things that I've believed that man has said over the last decade or so.
Yeah, and tons of other people.
That everybody does that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Totally. Like
he said everyone does it, and I was like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, like actually.